And are we live? Come on, stream, baby. And we are now officially live. So, hello everyone, and welcome to my fourth session here on building a chat app using React. And I basically made all the data that's in this sidebar here, all these conversations get loaded into the state, and then have the state propagated down into the components. So there's a conversation list component, and then there's a conversation item for each component. There's a conversation item for each item that's in this list here. Okay, so we had all the state basically transitioned down from the Redux store through to these components and displaying here. I've done the same thing over here as well for the messages. They were linked to an individual conversation. What I also did was I added basically a selected conversation state to the store, which allowed me to basically click these, and you can see we get different conversations. Okay, and that's kind of where we got to. Now, kind of off stream, I fixed a few styling problems. So what happened last time was when I clicked on, say, John Anderson here, and it has just the one message, this chat window was a little bit thinner. All right. So now I've made it so that the chat window stays the same size, no matter how many messages are contained inside this chat window. So this is something I did off camera. Well, not off camera, off stream, sorry. And on top of that, I basically cleaned up a few things in the code as well. Nothing too important to worry about. So what I want to get done in this video, or in this session, is I now want to be able to add messages to the message part of this application by basically submitting a message in this text box and pressing enter. And on top of that, I'm going to add a button over here to the right that will allow you to click like a send, and it will do the same thing. So I'll update the state, and then that will propagate down into this component here. All right, so basically we're going to update the state with the new message, and as a result of that, this part will update. On top of that, I'm thinking that I may have time to implement the delete part for this bin icon up here, which will delete an entire conversation from the state. And if we get time, I might even add the ability to do some keyword searching up here, which will filter out these conversations here. Cool. So let's get started. So I'm going to start off with the form. And what I thought I'd do first is I'd probably add the button. Okay. So I'm going to come over to what I've currently got, which this is my main container, the chat shell. So we're not going to be looking at that right now. We're going to come over to our chat form component, and I'm going to basically add a button after this input here, just like that. And I might call it, let's say, send. And see how that looks to begin with. As we can see, it's not working right down here. So we need to clean this up a little bit and get it working. So what I think I need to do here is I need to change what the main component is using here, which I believe is CSS grid. I need to make that flexbox now. So what have we got? Chat form, images. So we've got the chat form here. So in fact, I just noticed that really I've got the chat form declared twice here. So first thing I'm going to do is we'll just basically do that. And I might actually delete this. And we'll cut this, and I'll actually put it above the image part. And then we'll just format this a little bit better, like so. And then bring this up a little bit so that everything is formatted correctly. Cool. Now, I had it as a grid before, which meant I had a grid which basically had two columns in it, but now I'm adding a third column. Now, I could come in and just add a third column and say, okay, we'll make the button a certain width based on setting a third column to be a certain size. But I think instead what I'll do is I'll change this to flexbox, just because I may, in the future, I want to add more content here. So we'll go flex, and then how about we basically set the width of all these other items to certain sizes. So for the input, let's say we want the size of that to grow. So we'll just set a flex value here of grow to whatever. So we'll just do that. And I'll actually get rid of all this extra sizing up here. Align content center. Well, that doesn't really work with Flexbox, so we'll get rid of that. Neither does grid gap, so we'll have to deal with that too. In fact, I'll just leave that comment to 32 pixels in width and height. So let's go width, 32 pixels, height, 32 pixels. Get that down to a respectable size again, cool. Now we've lost our gap, but that's fine. What I'll do on the input is I'll add a margin of 0 on the top, 0 on the bottom, and 15 on each side. And save that and see how that happens. And that gives us our gap. In fact, what I might do instead is not actually add a gap on the right. So we'll change this to margin left and make it 15 pixels. Cool, so that gives us that gap back. And now we'll just deal with this button over here. So let's deal with the height of it first. So I believe the height of the grid before was 51 pixels high. So let's see what happens if I set a button here to, actually, no, we don't need to set the button to be that high. We can get rid of align items to be center, and that will stretch the button's height. We'll have to pad some stuff down. No, actually, we'll leave it with center. We'll leave it at center. Yeah, and we'll make the button 51 pixels high. So button height 51 pixels. And I'm just basing that because I think that's the height of the actual text box here. Or at least that's what it looks like. And we'll set the flex value of this to not grow, not shrink, and we'll say, let's go with 90 pixels to start off with. I think that's it. That'll make the button really big, but that's fine. And I like that. I think that's a good size for the button. So now let's just try and make it look like it seamlessly fits in with the input here. So I think with the input, I'm going to adjust the border radius to remove these two border radiuses here on the right-hand side. So to do that, we no longer just have a border radius of 6 pixels here. So we want 6 pixels. So the top left, the top right we want to be 0, bottom right we want to be 0, and then bottom left will be 6 pixels again. And see how that looks. Cool, so we've got our round edges here, and it's all square over here. Cool. What else do we want to do? I'm just trying to think. Do we want to remove the border right on the input? I think so. So we've got a border here, but I'm going to remove the border right to set it to none. And that's okay, I think. We'll deal with that for now. And now let's go and adjust the button. So I think the button I want to be the same color as this over here. So let's give it a background of what's the color? Color. Let's go and look at message in the CSS. And I eventually will change this to use Sass instead, so that we don't have to hard code the same color everywhere. I can just use a variable instead. And see how this looks. And that's okay. We just need to fix the text up. So let's do that. So we'll go color. We'll set that to white. Cool. Now we'll just up the font size a little bit. So maybe we'll go font size 1.4 rand. Nice, that's looking a lot better. Now I kind of want to give those a little bit of border, maybe add some border radius as well. So we'll add the top right here and the bottom right. We'll give some rounded edges on that, kind of like this one up here, but the opposite way. So it'll start off with 0 and end in 0, and then it'll be 6 pixels and 6 pixels. And see how that looks. And that looks pretty darn good. All right. So what else do we want to do? I'm going to remove the outline because that's always in the way. And what else? Let's add a little bit of padding, I reckon. So maybe after the flex, I'll add a padding. Let's say nothing on the top and bottom, but we'll give 10 pixels left and right just to be safe. And they didn't really do anything, but I think it's a big deal. Now, can we add maybe a slightly darker border around the outside here? Maybe slightly darker than the current color that we've got. Let's do that. So I think there's a darker color around. No, the border here is the same, but I swear there's a different color. Let's just come back and try this first. And we'll change it to border. We'll go let's go 1 pixel solid, that color. And yeah, you can't really see anything there, so we need to change the color a bit. So let's go with maybe a little bit more or a little bit less blue. So we'll go 8.8 and maybe a little more green. We'll go 2C, 8.8. That looks like it's a darker blue. And it's there. It's a little bit too thin though. So maybe we'll upgrade that to, we'll say 6 pixels. Just like the rounded borders. And that's way too thick. Let's try 2. No, you know what? I think having 1 would have been fine. And then I think having a border left of, let's say, no, actually, I think I'm just going to leave it like that. We can change it a little bit later if we need to. But it's a button. Now, it doesn't really look like it's a button. It doesn't push down or anything, but that's because we took away the border. So at least we might add a cursor just so we know that we can press it. And now, yeah, that's probably a little bit better. Cool. All right, so that's all the styling done. So let's actually do some functionality. So I'm going to come over to my form now, and I need to have this emit a click event. So we'll go click, no, it's on click equals, and we're going to send out something. So we're going to grab the props, and let's say on message submitted. We'll just call it that, and I can basically do the following. On message submitted, and what I really want to grab is e.target.value, I think that will give me the text that's in this thing here. I'm pretty sure of it. No, hang on. No, this won't work because this is going to give me the target of the button, not the target of the input. So how do we... What we should do is wrap it in a form like that, and we'll put is it on submit? On submit equals, let's have a look at the documentation for React. I've kind of forgotten this. Main concepts, forms, here we go. So text, name, control components, handle change, handle submit. So they've got a function called handle submit. and they're binding this .state.value, but I won't be doing that. So on change, they're using on change, but I want to click a button. Oh, okay, there you go. On submit, handle submit. So they're passing an event handler over here, and they're also binding it up here. Now, do I want to handle it inside the form, or do I want to propagate it up? I think what I really want to do is actually send the event back with the input that's in it. So I have to have a handle submit. We're going to grab the value from the input. Now, how do I get that? This doesn't really tell me. It just uses the e.target.event. So what if I want to get, and probably the simplest answer is I just set some state on the component. Yeah, let's do that actually. Let's set some state. So we might try using one of the hooks. So we'll come down to hooks, and we're going to use this state hook. So let's use this here. So let's grab the use state from React, like so, just so I can keep it functional. And then we'll grab this const. Instead of calling it count, we'll call it something else. So this will be message, or we'll put text message, and this one will be set text message, like so. And so with that, we go use state, and for now I'm just going to start with an empty string because we don't want anything to be in the form. And then I think I just go on change, right? So if I go back to the form bit, we set the value to what the current state is. So on input, this will become values this dot state dot value, and I can call it value. Is it this dot state dot value? In fact, I think this will just be message, text message. Sorry, it won't be this dot state dot value because I'm using the hook. Cool. And I don't know if I'll ever have to. Oh yeah, I will have to set that when it's successful. So here's the thing. I probably want to, in the future, submit to the server, and only when the message is sent successfully do I want to clear the message in the text box. So that makes this now a smart component because it has to have access to the state. Does it? Yeah, it has to have access to the state. I'm just trying to think. But we won't worry about that yet. So we're going to keep this here. We're going to bind it to that. And I'm just going to, for now, add these all down on new lines because I'm going to use an event here as well, which is the onChange, handle onChange. Don't think I'm going to be using this. I'm probably going to be using handle change, just like that. And I'm just going to go const handle change equals, and this will be E. And here is where I'll go this dot set. Oh no, sorry. I'll just go set text message. Let's just try this E dot target dot value. Oh no, hang on. No, I'm going to refresh this back to that. All right, because I'm going to clear it, and I'm going to go on message submitted, like so, passing back E dot target.value. No, that's, wait a minute. Just trying to think here. I don't think that's what I want to do though. Handle change. Okay, so for them, they're just setting the state. Yeah, no, so I was correct the first time. So for this, I'm just going to put this down here. And we'll do this on submit. Cool. So now we've got our on submit event handler. So we're going to have another handler here called handle submit. And this will take probably not an E. At this point, we'll go on message submitted, passing in text message. And then we'll go set text message to blank. And I think once I set handle submit in here, and I think I don't need all this stuff. Whoops. I can actually just do that, and this will be just that, and I think that will work. I don't need access to E here. I'm just passing through text message and set text message. Cool. So what I need to do now, because this is still probably not going to work, in fact it's probably going to break. Well, it doesn't show it breaks. But have we got any error? No, surprisingly not. Surprisingly no error. Okay, so let's console log this just to make sure it's actually doing something. So let's grab e.target.value. Very surprised that didn't break first time. It's actually, yeah, no, it's definitely printing stuff out. So eventually I'll add a, well, okay, so when I press enter, it's submitting the form to the server. That's fine. That should be just a matter of going at the very end here, e.prevent default, like that. Or that might fire off a handle submit. We'll see in a minute. So if I do this, yeah, it still submits the server. So it's not this one. So it must be down here. So we'll put E here and see if that makes any difference. No, it's still submitting. Okay. Interesting. What have they got in their code base here? Well, they say event.prevent default. So they're doing that. They're using input type submit. What am I using? I'm using button. Let's try button type equals submit and see if we can hijack from that. Okay. No, it's still submitting. Oh, I know why. Because on submitted, that will be null at this point, so it's going to throw an error, and then it's not going to call e.prevent default. So, in fact, what I probably should do, just so that that doesn't happen, I should fire it first. So it's always guaranteed to not hit the server even if there's an error. So let's try that. And we get an error, and it's still, oh, hang on, no. It's just giving me a React error, which is fine. Okay, that's fine. That's totally fine. So I'll put a if. I really should, or should I do this? No, I shouldn't do that. I'm not going to add an if, because then I'm hiding a bug. So I'm happy with all that. I just need to get this on message submitted down into the chat form now. So I can do that from my container, which is my chat shell, and my chat form is here. So we can go on blah, blah, equals, and I'm just going to add probably a call to a dispatch here. Let's see, what did I do over here? I just went conversation changed. So I passed it in as a parameter up here. And once again, I'm probably going to have to bring these all down to another line because it's getting too long. So when I'm on stream, I bring them down because it's doesn't fit on the screen properly because I make the font bigger. But when I'm mucking around on my own, I put it back because I'm used to a smaller font. So on message submitted, we're now going to pass that in, which means that in my map dispatched props, I'm now going to have a second dispatch method. And this is going to take some message text. And we're going to dispatch. Well, for now, let's not do anything. Let's just basically just call a function that goes console.log message text. Let's just see if it logs out first before we go too far. And I made a mistake, and that's because I didn't add this in there. Right, okay. So if we come over now and I type something, we're not going to get anything until I press enter. Okay, so we've got our submission and we've got our text there. And if I press the send button, we also get a submission. Fantastic. All right, so we don't have to do any more on our form for now. That's a good thing. So the next step is now to define an action that will handle this dispatch. So I need to create another action. So I need to go to my actions, which since my previous stream, I moved it into a store folder. So they're now all on here. And I had an index.js in the last video. So for now, I'll just keep it in here, but I might pull these out later. So now we're going to go export const. We'll go new message added. And we're passing in a message text, or text message, I should say. And eventually this will have images that we upload as well, so it'll be a different kind of message. But for now, I'm just doing this. And we've got ourselves a function. And we're going to return an action that has a type of new message added, and the payload will, for now, I'll just say text message. Cool. So that is my new action. So the next step, now I've defined my action, is I have to dispatch it or have it go back to my shell and actually dispatch that action. So I'm going to bring that in up here. And I grabbed the wrong thing. We'll grab new message added like that. And now I can call dispatch my action, passing in my message text. Beautiful. So I've handled that up to this point. Now I just want to quickly see, actually no, I'm not going to handle it there. I'm going to come to my reducer. So I've got a conversations reducer and then my regular reducer. So I'm going to probably create a messages reducer for this later. Actually, I'm going to leave it in my conversations reducer. So there's my initial state. And here's my switch. So here I'm just going to add another case statement for, what was it? New message. Now I get that one. New message added. So I don't want this reducer to get too big though. So I'm going to grab our new state. And then we'll go, well, we need to work out what the current ID of the new state is. Based on the selected conversation, we need to get the current conversation Actually, no, I can just go new state dot selected conversation dot messages dot push. That's what I can do. But do I need to, because selected conversation, it also needs to have a new version of itself. So const updated new conversation. Or does it? Let's not do that for the moment. So we'll go new state dot selected conversation dot messages dot push. And what's the format of my messages? So for now, I'm just going to grab something like this. I'm not going to worry about putting in dates and all that at the moment. It's not a big deal. I just want to see something come up inside of the window. So we'll push this object, and for the message text, we'll grab what is in the action. Action dot message text, I think I called it. Text message. I called this message text and this text message. Very confusing. Anyway, I can update the schema later. It's not a big deal. And then I just need to return new state. Now, my concern here is I may have to create a new instance of that as well, because that's a property that's on the new state. But for now, I'm not going to worry too much about that. So save this. And let's see if we get a new message in here. So it should be blue. It should have the text I type in it, and it'll have some random date here. Okay. So if I type in hello guys and press enter, it didn't do anything. And Mac is telling me to take a tour. I'm not interested in that right now. So what does it do? It opens a damn window. I said I'm not interested. Okay, so that didn't work. That surprised me. So the key is now, does it actually get all the way to the reducer? Does it actually get into here? New message fired. Let's see if we get a console log. Let's type anything in, press. Alright, so it's gotten there twice. Why is it firing twice? Oh, that's a bit of a worry. Is it because chat form? Could be because I've got this here and I don't need that. In fact, what is that? I don't need that anymore. I think that might have been the problem. So let's go back and just make sure it's not firing twice anymore. Yeah, it's firing once. Cool. All right, that's a little bit more like it. So it is getting into my reducer. So the reducer is taking my current state. It's creating new state. I have a feeling that this now needs to equal. So let's just push this down. So this now, it needs to equal a new object as well. Like this. And if anybody knows if that's the case, I'd like to know that for sure. But for now, I am just going to do this. And new state dot selected conversation dot. I'm pretty sure it's messages. So for each conversation, it has a messages array. Cool. Select the conversation. So by rights, this should have worked. So what I might do is I'm going to console.log out this new state.selected conversation, just out of curiosity, just to see what's in it. And save. if I now do something and do that, it's actually picking Kim O'Neill. So if I change it to me and I do it and save, okay. So it's actually picking up that conversation. And it's even got my new message in it. That's my new message. So if I add another one, oh, it's got that one too. So what is going on here? Oh, they are. Look, they are appearing. They're appearing at the top here. Oh, it's because I'm using Flexbox, and Flexbox, when I push it to the end of the array, it's putting it at the top. What I need to actually do is push it to the front of the array. That's what I'm doing wrong here. So I actually had this right in the first place. Instead of using push, I'd have to use unshift, I believe. Is it unshift or shift? I can never remember. Let's try this one first. I think it's shift, actually. No, there it is. Hey! Isn't this cool? Awesome. I've got this part working. Nice stuff. All right. So this is all just using the Redux store. All right. Obviously, this is not going off to the server first. It's literally just sending an event up to basically the chat shell, and then the chat shell is saying, okay, on message submitted, just call the on message submitted of the props that are passed in, which is here, which is all it's doing is dispatching a new action, passing in that text. And then basically I've created a Redux switch statement in my conversations just for now, because it's against the selected conversation, and I've just added the messages there. Cool. So that's the first step. Now I may refactor this later, maybe, take it away from conversations reducer and put it in. So my understanding will be is that I will find out what the current conversation is. I'll remove that from the conversations array, and then I'll null out the selected conversation and point it to probably the one above. So if I'm currently Kim and I delete Kim, it'll go up to Daryl. If Daryl's the first one and that gets deleted, then it'll just go down to Kim. Or if Kim's the first one, it'll go down to John. And if it's at the very end, it'll just go up the chain. I think that's how I'm going to do it. So let's get this working. So the first step is to come over to my chat title where the little bin logo is. So in here, and I've got it set up as an image right now, and I'm still using a require. I'll probably fix this later. I'm not too worried about that, but I want to add a click handler to it. So let's do that. So we've got our alt, and I'll just go on click. And once again, I'm just going to extract from the props. We'll go on delete conversation. Let's do that. And we'll fire that off. And no big deal. So this, we're not going to pass anything back. Or do we? Hang on. No, because it's always going to be linked to the current conversation. It's never going to be, or at least in this situation, it's not going to be, I have to determine what the conversation ID of this conversation is, because it's always going to only ever be one. So I can just do that like so. So I'm just calling it directly. And for whatever reason, it doesn't like that. It's probably because it's up to or through the chat shell as well. So again, this will be another prop of chat shell on delete conversation. And we've got our selected conversation. So technically I already know what the selected conversation is at this point. on delete conversation equals on delete conversation. Straightforward. And then down to my map dispatch to props. We'll just put it in here. And we know we don't have anything. So I'll just go console.log deleting. And just make sure it's getting to here first. I've got a comma there. Cool. Now let's see, when I click this bin, it should come up with the text deleting. It does. Fantastic. Nice. All right. So now we've got it to this point, we need to create an action. So I'm going to come over to my store, into my actions, and we'll just copy the one above and we'll fix it a bit. In fact, I might stick it here and we'll go conversation deleted and delete conversation. It doesn't have any payload and it won't have any parameters. Literally, it's just going to be that. So just an object that returns a type that says delete conversation. And that's it. And then in my conversations reducer, I just realized I need another case here. And, not cast, case. And I'm going to return new state. And I wish there was a better way of just not doing this over and over, and there must be. So if anybody knows, please tell me. And I'll probably read conversations. We're going to splice out. We need the index of the current. So selected conversation. I'll just put C. C.id triple equals. And we're going to probably put this down on the next line. It equals the new state dot selected conversation dot ID. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to find out where the selected conversation is in the array of conversations. All right, I'm trying to grab that index, and then once I have that index, I'm using that to splice it out of the array. And then I can return that. Now the other thing I just need to do here as well is go, so I have to determine if the selected conversation is the first one. If it's the first one, then grab the, well, technically it would be still the first one anyway. So I'm just trying to think here. So selected index. So say it's the first one, it's going to be 0. So I can grab the 0 still. But if it's the last one, then it's going to go down by 1. Right? I think so. So if selected conversation index is greater than 0, then I'm just going to basically reduce that by 1. So if it's the last one, the selected index has to go down by 1, or if it's the second one, it has to go down by 1. But if it's the first one, then we don't move it because we're splicing out the first one. So the new first one will be what was the second one, if that makes any sense. So we do that, and then I just go new state dot selected conversation equals new state dot conversations select the conversation index. Now the other thing I might do here, just to be defensive, is I should probably go if new state dot conversations is not empty. So if this dot length is bigger than 0, then we'll do all this stuff. All right, because if it's empty, then it should be null. All right. So we do that. Else, new state dot selected conversation will be null. I think that's correct. Now, mind you, all this code will go away probably a little bit later. Or, no, actually, it may not. We'll see. We'll see. For now, I'm just working with the in-memory store that's set up by Redux and just basically removing data from that state in the store. And we've got an error. So the conversation is constant, right? Yeah, of course. I need to change that to a let. All right. Let's see how we go here. So if I did this right, and I come up to the first one and I go delete, well, it still says deleting. Why is it saying deleting? Did I not dispatch the action? I didn't dispatch the action. There you go. So now I have to come over and grab this and come back to my chat shell. Call that. We don't have any arguments, and then I need to import that up here. Cool. Now let's see if it works. So I'll pick me at the very start, click the bin, and I'm gone. Fantastic. I'll go to the very last one, and I'll delete her, and it goes up to Stan George, down, 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 down. Yeah, what I did there, probably in the next session. Yep, I'm going to leave it here. Obviously, I have to take into consideration that there are going to be times where selected conversation will be null, and therefore it won't be able to access the ID there. So basically what this means is I have to go into chat shell, and instead of passing probably through the selected conversation ID, I'll probably just pass through the selected conversation. And then inside the conversation list, I will check to see if if it's null or not. And if it's null, then we don't make anything active. You know, we have to do that kind of logic. Now, this is probably something I wouldn't have found until I got to this point anyway. So now you can see we're back to square one. So we can delete again. Just keep deleting people. Anyway, I think I'm happy with the state of the application now. Obviously, there's no animation to this yet, so it's very clunky. I just delete it and things just disappear, which is not the most interesting way to see things interact, but it's good enough for now. So that's where I'm going to end it, guys. So thank you if you're watching this, and I'll see you all in the next session.